printing block and you drew all of your lines in Sharpie. So the next step is to start cutting. When you when we go to cut, so we're going to be making our print using two colors. The first layer will be one color and the second layer will be black. For the first layer, you only want to cut the areas that you want to be the white of your paper. You do not want to just go and start cutting all of your lines right at once. So in my print here, I've only cut this little section here around the whites of the eyes here, this part of the cheek over here, and then I cut this little part here, and then these two tiny little sections here, again for the whites of the eyes. And that's it. And so if you look at this printing block and you compare it to my print over here, you can see that only the white space on here is cut. And so that's all we want to do for the first layer. Just cut the parts of your print that you want to be white. The second part will be getting in all of your drawn in lines on here, but the first part, you just want to cut the areas of your print that you want to be white. So once you've done that, you can then grab some paper. You want to get 2 sheets of paper. Make sure they're both the same size. They should be, but just double check. And then write your name at the bottoms of each sheet. Of those 2 sheets of paper, one of them is going to be your registration sheet. And the registration sheet is going to be the sheet that helps you line up your print so that every time you print, your printing block is in the same place each time. Because remember, you're going to be printing twice. So when you print your first layer, you want to make sure that when you print your second layer, it's going to line up perfectly with that first layer. So that's going to be what the registration sheet is for. So the way you're going to make your registration sheet is you're going to take your printing block, you're going to line it up on your paper so that it's in the center. You don't need to measure it, but just kind of roughly eyeball it and make sure it looks like it's in the center of the paper. It can go horizontal or vertical. It's totally up to you. And then you're going to trace around your printing block like so. And then really important, make sure that you write bottom at the bottom of your print, just so you know which side the bottom is on, because that'll be really helpful when orientating your paper later on to print. So you're going to trace around it, you're going to write bottom on the bottom, and then I wrote on here, guard this paper with your life. You will need this paper every time you print. And if you lose it, it's going to be really hard to line up your prints later on. So make sure that this doesn't get thrown away. All right, once you have your printing block cut and you have your registration sheet made, and then you have another sheet of paper that you're going to actually print on, you're then going to roll out some ink onto your printing block and print it. I've made a video here that I'm going to show you about how to actually print your first layer using that registration sheet. So I'm going to play that here. Okay, so we have our registration sheet here. We're going to take our printing block that you've inked up with your first layer of color, and we're going to line that up within those edges as well as we can. And then you're going to take your second sheet of paper, the one that you're going to actually print on. And then what you want to do is you want to line this up with the edges of your paper down on one side here. Take your time with this part. Don't rush this, because you will never line up your print again when you have to go and print the second time. Make sure your print is lined up with your papers are lined up, and then you're just gonna let it drop right back down on here. And then you can just kind of tap it with your fingers here a little bit, and the ink will actually keep the papers from sliding around. Then you're gonna take a clean roller and just roll back and forth like this, like so. Make sure you hold down on your print, because you do not want it to slide around. But in general, the ink is sticky enough that it keeps the papers from sliding around. And then after you feel like you might have done it enough, what you want to do is you want to hold down with one hand over here, and then take your paper and peel back on one side. And you can take a look at it and see if you have big gaps of white like this, you can
go back in and give it another good roll this way. I always recommend holding down and lifting up both sides just to make sure everything is printing okay. And then once you get to a point where you feel like all of your color looks good, you're going to go ahead and peel off. So this is going to be your first layer of print.
So once you've made one, you want to make at least 3 prints of that first layer. So you can make them in different colors if you want. That would be really cool. Definitely wash your printing block in between prints if you're using a different color. If you're going to print all of your first layer prints in red, you really don't need to clean your print off, or sorry, you don't need to clean your printing block off each time. You can just keep inking right on the same one. But if you're going to switch colors, definitely clean your block off in between. And then when you finish the last of your 3 prints for that first layer, you want to just go ahead and clean off your printing block, and then we'll move on to the last video, which is going to be cutting the rest of your block to make the black outlines.